everybody to take a seat, please. Чи можу попросити, щоб всі сіли? Is that better? Okay. Slava Isusu Christu. I'm going to speak English because we have few people, English-speaking people here, and we've also got a representative of the Federal Police here, Gerald, who will be speaking in a minute on cyber security. But before then, I'd just like to go over a few things. First of all, welcome everybody here. Now, I know we call this information session because the last 2 weeks we've been inundated with a lot of calls. There are about 5, 6 people having calls all day, every day from all sorts. And we're going to have to cover a number of topics, but I know every one of you has probably got a specific topic you want to hear about or ask about. So today is really about an information session, us to you, as much as we know today, and any questions you may have to us, which if we can't answer, we're going to be recording and then taking it further, either to the government or to wherever we can. The situation, the main sort of issues that came our way, getting a lot of feedback with this mic, the main questions that came our way over the phone, I mean there were many, but the main sort of big topics are visas, which we'll try and cover in detail today, as much as we know. Services and eligibility for services, and that being schooling, medical, Centrelink, etc. Donations, who do we donate to, where and how. Volunteering, we love volunteers, we could do with a few more. And rallies, there have been a lot of questions about when's the next rally. So I'll try and cover in broad detail where we are today and what we know. Okay, and then we'll have other speakers take us through the specialty areas. First of all, it's been 16 days since the war started. Sorry, feels like a lifetime. In week 1, everybody in Australia was scrambling. The government, SUA, Hromada, the community as a general. Everyone was scrambling to see what's the situation, what do we do, how can we help, who's coming, who's not coming, and what's the situation. The SUA and Hromade immediately started talking to the government. I won't say pressuring because government was very open to the discussions about what they can do for us. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, we're live streaming this on YouTube, okay? So there will be people watching the whole presentation. So there was a lot of work done both at Prime Minister level, Minister Hawke level, that's the Immigration Minister, and anybody else that we could co-opt. Federal and state. I've had probably 10 meetings already with Stefan around Stefan Romanu, trying to organise things. The government has come across and done a lot of work, which I'll explain in a minute. So that was week 1. We were 5 or 6 of us, I forget how many there were taking calls daily. Media, TV, the whole thing, and then people panicking as to, what do I do? What can I do for my family? Week 2, we started to try and organise ourselves. We continued the pressure with the governments, but we set up various liaison with the Federal Police. They're here to help in whatever capacity they can. Today we'll be talking about cyber security, particularly as it relates to you logging on and paying, donating money, etc. Special relationships with NISTAD. NISTAD is trying to help us and the people coming to Australia with things like credit cards or debit cards, I should say, and so on. So we're looking at how we can do that quickly. Because you can imagine, any one of us wants to open up an account, you need 100 points. How does a mother with 3 children have 100 points? to, today. So we have to go through those hoops and see how we can help these people. We've also set up teams, and in particular we've set up a Ukrainian humanitarian aid committee, which Teresa leads, and she'll be talking about that a bit later. Now, that was 5 days ago or 6 days ago, and she's been also scrambling, getting together a team of 8 or 9 people, all volunteers that will be helping in the different areas. We're also looking at creating a hub. Now, we had a discussion with the government, Victorian government, yesterday or 2 days ago, I forget, and they were talking about a hub. I don't know what a hub is, I've never seen one, but where there are refugees or displaced people coming into a country, the government helps them by setting up this hub, which is a place where people can come, get supplies, get clothing, or get legal, medical support, etc. Okay, so we're looking at doing that. Hanya is going to, I'm going to ask Hanya to talk about that a little bit more, maybe to tell you what it is. I'm hoping to go and see one of these hubs in action, and my preference would be to set the hub up here. So, the government has done a lot of work already, and in particular with visas. I'll talk about visas in a minute, especially, but to date, over the last 6 days, they've processed about 330 visas, okay? And I'll explain the reasons for that. First of all, they're recommending, and everything I'm telling you here is recommendations. People here and your families coming, you can do what you like. You can call yourself refugees, you can raise refugee visas if you like, but the government is recommending to use the tourist subclass 600 visa, either sponsored or unsponsored. And the reason for that is they have categorized that particular visa for Ukrainians as priority. If they use that visa, they will get priority approval normally within 24 hours. And also, it has a lot of, I don't know how to explain it, but softness about it. In other words, normally you need a passport, health check, COVID checks, and so forth. The government is going to not so much overlook it, but not look at it as strictly. So if the applicant says, I had to leave my home in a hurry and my passport's at home, and I'm here, I don't have it, the government will take that on board and they process the visa. So they look at the visas differently. And the reason that we're recommending to use that visa is that will get your family and friends into Australia quickly. That's the quickest way to get them in. Yes, we had a chat this morning with a lady who says no, she's definitely going to raise a visa as a refugee. Refugee has a totally different status, and they could be waiting months. And not only that, the criteria for a refugee would be adhered to strictly. No passport, you can't come. No health check, you can't come. So that's why the government is saying, for the time being, until we get them safe into Australia, use the tourist visa, get them into Australia. Once they're here, in the next week, we hope to have exemptions around that visa. And they'll tell us what the next step will be for these people. Most of these people, mind you, will be coming, it'll be women and children. So we need to get them here, and then we look at the next step. Now, the next step might be that they recategorise to a humanitarian visa or something, but the government is hoping to, this week, come up with a definition and eligibility for the services, Centrelink, medical, legal, schooling for children, etc. That's as much as we know as it stands. I'm meeting with Minister Hawke on Thursday, and hopefully by then we'll have some definitions and decisions made by the government, so we'll be able to go through the next step. Tatiana? It is. It's working.
Sorry to hold you up. Just our nephew's only arrived on Thursday with his wife and his 1-year-old child. And when they went to apply for that visa, they originally got told that it was for 12 months. But if you tick the 12 months box, they send it to London and start processing it in a completely different way. And you should only be applying for 3 months, not 12 months. And then whatever's going to happen will happen.
Okay. Well, that's something new on me. Minister Hawke did say that visa is valid, and not only that, they add 6 months on top of the 12 months. So can we note that down? I'll actually send a note to him. Thank you. So all these things are coming thick and fast. So as you can see, another thing that we weren't aware of. There's also an issue raised about no passports for children. Some children have never had a passport, etc. Not an issue. Minister Hawke said, write down the children's name, give us their age, and say that they've never had a passport or their passport was lost, etc. And that'll be taken into account. Yeah.
My mum in Ikea right now, I don't know if my mum in Ikea right now, and I don't know if she can use this visa because she can't get out, but I'm still doing these things, right? Unfortunately, her passport is expired in 2021, and I've been back and forward with the department, the immigration department, for probably already 2 weeks. So, and they're telling me, oh, she should go and just prolongate her visa and her passport, and I told them, look, she can't do. She has a passport, but passport expired in 2021, but immigration department telling no, she must extend her passport, right? Yes, yes, thank you.
That's what I mean about we're going to try and help people, and that's what the Horumada is for. Okay, so these sort of issues, there will be a lot of issues, and a lot of you will have different ones. So whatever you do, if you can communicate with Teresa, and Teresa will talk to you in a minute. So if you could leave your name and address, and we'll take that up with Minister Hawke. Before I move off passports, Yarama, did you want to say anything?
Dobry den. Hello, everybody. My name is Yarama Politek. I'm the director of AFUO. We have just loaded up last night the latest information on our website, which is OZEUKES, OZEUKES.com. And if you open that website now, you will be able to scroll right down to the bottom. You'll see various articles of what we've done and what's been happening, but scroll right down the bottom where it says, I need help coming to Australia. Now, what that says is the Australian Department of Home Affairs is supporting Australia's response to escalating crisis in Ukraine. There are fact sheets on the website. What they're saying has been said just now. Apply for a visa subclass 600, nothing else. As was said, that is a priority for Ukrainians. We get top of the list priority. Then you apply it's in English and in Ukrainian as well. So what you do is, when you complete that form, you can put in, as Tanya said, put in 3 months. Don't put anything else, 3 months, because it automatically gets kicked up to a more lengthy stay. So vaccinations, they're waiving that. passports, documentations, whatever your relative can scrounge up as an identity will suffice. So don't panic if there's no passports or anything like that. So please read that website. It's very, very clear. Like I said, it was only uploaded last night. So it's ozeukes.com. All right, thank you.
Ďakujem, Rema. That's how fast this week has been going. Every step of the way, we find out one thing and then something else happens. So, ďakujem. That's good information. Okay, I'll just cover off 3 more points, and then I'll hand over to Gerald from the AFP. First of all, donations. When we started, about 15 days ago, we set up the Ukraine Crisis Appeal. And you would have seen pamphlets going around at our demonstrations about Ukraine Crisis Appeal with a QR code. Over the next 2 weeks, we've had a lot of queries where people don't actually want to give money, donations, to a humanitarian or medical aid. They want to give money for defence, for the army. So we're now going and rejuvenating an appeal program called U-Help, which we've had for a while. And in the next few days, there'll be information coming about U-Help. And the intention of how we want to use U-Help is the money generated from this will go to the army. Okay? So that's the intention. So we'll have those 2 arms. Now, there are a lot of sites on the internet, American, Canadian, English, where you can go and donate if you wish. I would recommend going with an Australian site, whatever, but you know, it's your choice. We're managing these funds as best we can. The Ukraine Crisis Appeal goes through Rotary and Caritas. So there's a fairly good controlled process of the money getting to where it needs to go. David will talk about this in a minute. We have real concerns about the banking system in Ukraine at the moment. Okay, it depends which city your families are in, whether they've got access to ATMs, what the banks are doing, and what will happen if Russia takes over a bank and so forth. So going through Caritas guarantees as best we can the money gets to Poland, and then from there it'll be funneled into humanitarian and medical assistance. Just a quick word on rallies. Every day I get questioned, when's the next rally? And I don't know whether we made the right decision or not. We had 2 rallies, and then we sort of stopped. And my thoughts were that if we have a rally every week, after 3 weeks, there'll be only a few people come to the rally because people just get tired and it's just old news. I was really waiting for events that might occur in Ukraine that we can actually protest against. Okay. Having said that, I think we're going to change that, and Lasia is going to try and organise at least some sort of rally, silent or otherwise, in the city on a weekly basis. So we're in the process of organising that.
Can I mention something to that? Just quickly, if you do want to attend a rally, every day from 6 till 8 p.m. you can join and stand aside the Russian community, because they are on Princes Bridge just near Flinders Street. Every day, 6 till 8 p.m, they're holding banners that say, "We stand with Ukraine, we don't want war." So on a daily basis, there's something you can do.
Those that attended the last rally, you would have heard Peter from the Russian community speak. So his group is working on that. In fact, on that note, I've had a number of conversations from a Russian group, and these are people actually born in Donbass. They only speak Russian. They feel a little bit more Russian than Ukrainian, but they don't know where they sit. But they are absolutely angry at Putin, and they also want to work with us to demonstrate against Putin. They say that he's not Russian, he's not ours, he's not representing what we want. So it's just interesting how this is developing. Okay, one last point. I've already mentioned it in passing. We've set up a group, which Teresa will talk about a bit later. It's the AUV Ukraine Humanitarian Aid Committee. We've also set up a couple of accounts in Dniester, because this aid committee is going to need some funding locally. We can give money to Ukraine, for humanitarian aid there, but we're going to need some money here. So we're going to be looking at what sort of funds we need, hoping that the government might give us some funds. We're also lobbying from that area, and then do what we have to do here. Now, we're dealing with a huge range of people that are coming. There's already, I forget, 300 or so people in Australia that have arrived. We didn't know they were coming because they came through families, etc. But most are women and children. We believe they're only here for a short time because they've come without their husbands and partners, so they'll probably go back. Our job is to try and help them through the next 2 years to assimilate, to get accommodation, etc. And some families are calling me and saying, we're giving them accommodation for the next 3 months or so, but we really can't do this for too long. How can you help? So we've got that sort of event. We've got people that will be arriving with no families. So we also have to look at the other end, where people come in and they know nobody. How do we meet and greet them? How do we support them on a daily basis? Because they have nobody to turn to. So it's a fairly big range of types of people that we're expecting. Did you want to add to that?
Further to that, the Australian Federation has applied to the Migrant Council of Australia, it's based in Canberra, for funding, with the intent of obtaining funds which obviously will go assist the Ukrainians coming in. So at the moment, we've done it. We've gone as far as we possibly can. So keep an eye out on the Aussie Ukes website. That's the best communication you can possibly get from the Australian Federation as far as what's happening, where it's happening, next steps, etc. All right?
Yeah. And rather than maintaining a number of websites, we're sort of focusing on that one so that as things change daily, it can be quickly updated and have one point of contact. Okay, one last point, and that is accommodation. Dan, I'll say we're close, but I thought we were close last week. That centre that was built for COVID, Mickleham Centre that was built for the COVID, potentially we might be able to use that for some of our people coming over, at least for the short term. So that's up there for grabs. Okay, I'd like to now introduce Gerald from the AFP, who is going to talk to you about a very important point, which I think I don't really think about very much, but it's very important. We're going to be doing a lot of internet stuff, or some of us are, donations, banking, etc. So this is very critical. Gerald.
Hello everyone, thank you for having me today and for the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of some cyber safety stuff. Normally the stuff that we present to schools to teach young people about how to be safe online, how to not fall for scams, how to not become prey to online predators, pedophiles. There's also stuff here that's relevant for you guys, and it's around password protection and things like that. Just recently, as a result of the thing that's going on in Ukraine right now, we've all been told that everyone should be updating their security settings on their computers, maybe upgrade to a better operating system or McAfee or whatever it's called out there, but talk to professionals about that and get your computers upgraded. And also, we've all heard and seen about the online scams that come, whether it's via email, text message or phone calls about, tax departments after you, you need to pay for these or else they're going to come and arrest you, things like that. That's all rubbish. Police don't operate like that. The tax department doesn't operate like that. If you're getting any kind of text message, any kind of email that you do not know who it's from, I suggest you delete it, don't open it. A lot of the hacks come in as an innocuous thing. It looks harmless, but the minute you open it, you let in a virus, okay? And that's the problem. Some people that you might get in contact with or might call you or cold call you and it happens a lot. They'll tell you that your computer, they've detected there's a virus in your computer, follow these steps and I will guide you through how to get it out. If you are unfortunate enough to believe these people and allow them to talk you into setting your computer up, basically you're going to give them remote access into your computer and that's it. They've locked you out, they've installed viruses, so don't talk to anyone in the computer world that you don't know. So today what I've got is a presentation, which is the adult version of a thing called Think You Know. So we deliver this in schools from grade 1 up to year 12, and there's also a version for culturally and linguistically diverse communities. But this is the adult version here. Okay. No, it's not R-rated. By the way, you Ukrainians really know how to make a police officer feel welcome. There's heaps of donuts and coffee over there, so thank you very much. No, I'm on duty, I can't drink the vodka. Okay. So, Think You Know, it initially was designed by the British police and it was modified for an Australian audience. It's law enforcement driven and it's delivered by volunteers in industry and in all law enforcement. So Bankwares, Datacom, Microsoft, Commonwealth Bank, and every state and territory police force will deliver this. And excuse me guys if I go slow a few times, I haven't delivered one of these in a long time and I'm a bit rusty. So the aim of this is to talk about things that kids say, see and do online and how what they do online can not only affect them straight away, but affect them in the future when they go looking for a job. And you'll see in the later slides what I'm talking about. No sound. I just paused it. Yeah, there's no sound. Tech guy. Ladies and gentlemen, just before we start too, I forgot. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet today, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Thank you.
We've established or started up a relationship with the AFP, and they're here to help in a range over a range of things. So our first meeting, I think we had 4 of their people here. They're looking at finance, legal aspects, cyber security, and so forth, and they want to work with us and understand our needs. So I thank them for that.
Before I start this, I'll just give you a bit of a background about my team and where we come from and how we've gotten to this place. After the terrorist attacks of September 11 in America, there was a big disconnect with the Muslim community in Australia, and my team was designed by 2 Muslim police officers and our hierarchy to put a team together to reconnect and bridge that gap between the Islamic community and the broader Australian community. To my Muslim brothers and sisters in the audience, Assalamu alaikum. Sorry, I didn't say hi earlier. So that's how our team was started. We have migrated and moved and grown, and we cast a much wider net into more communities now. So wherever there's a community or a new emerging community that needs our assistance, we're there to help and help that community with whatever they need, what we can do. If you guys have got time later, I've got another slideshow here that I can put on if you want to see it. It actually explains who the AFP are as an organisation, what we do, and how far around the world we actually work. And in it, there's actually a slide that I put in about MH17, which was unfortunately shot down over Ukraine a few years ago. We had teams of officers and forensics go out as part of the worldwide response to that. So there's a slideshow in there that I could show you later.
LOLs, that's laugh out loud. Laugh out loud.
Laugh out loud.
Hey babe. Hey babe.
Babe, but without the B.
Hi babe.
Hey, baby.
MO. FOMO?
FOMO.
FOMO.
For our meeting only. Are they a band? I know that one. That's fear of missing out. Watch movies and hang out.
Watch Netflix tonight?
Watch TV.
So let's get together and relax.
Another slang saying for come over and have sexy times or something.
Happy face in the cloud. Love you.
It's dark and stormy, so we should make out. Do you love me?
Boyfriend and girlfriend kissing. I'm thinking of kissing you.
Picture of a hand, a peach, and her eyes open. Nah. Hi, peach. Surprise?
Clap, but, oh my goodness, face. Hi, would you like a peach?
Trying to cop a feel, baby?
Grab, touch your butt. I'm low-key trying to slide into your DMs. I wouldn't have a clue.
It's got to be some sort of a pick-up line. Nah, this one's got to be sexual though, you can tell.
Not your deepmost soul. I really like you and I want to get in your...
Pants? Oh, no. Not the
into
DM.
their mind. Trying to get into their mind.
Slay. S-L-A-Y. To kill, to do really well. If it's related to video gaming?
So basically that's talking about the language kids use in communicating in the digital world. So there's all these little acronyms and you know, shortened down words that adults struggle to put together. Just to show you that kids can communicate in a way that adults don't understand what they're talking about. Okay, talking about the technology. Technology now, it's different to what it was when we were kids. They've got access to online instant messaging around the world, locally, and it's good, but it's also got some real bad stuff in it, and we're going to talk a bit about that. There's chat rooms that the kids go into in games, and that's where pedophiles tend to hang out, in these chat rooms, looking for kids that they can actually start grooming. So that's the bad side of it. There's also stuff that the kids shouldn't be looking at in the internet, hardcore pornography, violence, and things like that. What kids see, say, and do online. Okay, big one, gaming. A lot of kids become addicted to online games, and they're created by social engineers. There's actually a Netflix movie out called The Inconvenient Truth, I think, and it's all about these programmers that in Silicon Valley that have resigned from their jobs because they don't like what the games and the internet content is doing to kids. So they're made by social engineers, and they use the same kind of techniques that they use in poker machines. Keep you addicted, keep you playing longer. It releases the same kind of chemical stimulus in the brain which keeps you addicted there and playing longer. I'm sure a lot of you have known and heard about kids in families that you cannot remove the kid from the device anymore. They have tantrums and hissy fits, and that's the problem. Okay, social networking and meeting people. Excuse me for a second. I'm a bit rusty delivering these, guys. I haven't done these for ages. Okay, so kids these days now are getting on these apps, and one of the reasons why they get addicted to is they instantaneously get a worldwide audience, and that's good and bad. They can promote themselves and show their talents, but also they can get exposed to stuff they shouldn't really be looking at. And the apps that they're getting into, are they age appropriate? Because some of them have ratings for certain age groups. Okay, there's instant messaging. So we just just quickly spoke about that, real-time conversations, sharing videos and voice calls. But sometimes in these chat groups as well, they can go into private conversations where if two people meet in the chat group, they can go into a private conversation that no one else can see. And what goes on in there, no one knows. Okay. One of the things too that kids don't realise is that the people that are out there trying to groom children, the kids put too much information about themselves in the online space. They might show a photo of themselves in front of their school with their school uniform on. So if a pedophile or stalker can see that photograph, they can instantaneously work out what school that kid goes to. So educate your kids, if they're going to post something, don't post too much information about yourself. So the stats show 27% of photos are in school uniforms. 58 share photos of their faces in selfies, and 9% share phone numbers or their actual address. So that's actually scary. So the challenge is, how do you balance privacy, relationships and reputation in the online space so that you're safe, but you can still use the technology for good stuff? And that's your challenge as parents. Okay, this is the one that you guys might want to have a look at. Passwords. So latest intelligence suggests that a passphrase is the safest way of using a password. A lot of people might use their birth year and 1, 2, 3, 4, or their name and their birth date or something, or password. Don't do that. A passphrase is something simple like your favourite food, your favourite colour, and where there's a letter, put it, like if there's an O, put a 0, put a space, put a gap, put a symbol. A passphrase is something that won't exist in real time and place, so hackers will have a lot of trouble trying to hack that. When you go to websites, make sure that is a secure site, and that will start with HTTPS at the front. Terms and conditions. This is something important, guys. Have any of you in the audience ever looked at the terms and conditions of anything you've ever signed up for in the internet? Has anyone? Put your hand up if you've read terms and conditions. Yeah, the camera guy has, but did you understand it? Yeah. I'm guilty of that too. I start looking at the terms and conditions and I start scrolling down and scrolling. It's written that big, there's 1 million words. It's written in legal jargon. You need to be a professor of law to work it out. So you just, oh bugger, this is too hard. So you just go to the bottom, accept. But you've given that site the license to use everything you put in there. They own what you've put in, okay? So it's important to understand that. Okay, sexting. This is a big problem in schools at the moment where kids, male or female, are pressuring girls or boys to share naked photos. The problem is if you're under 18 years of age, that becomes storing child pornography and using a telecommunications device to transmit child pornography. So there are some quite serious offences there if it gets pursued by Victoria Police. Also, as I spoke about, it's going to come up to your digital footprint. Do anyone in the audience know what a digital footprint is? Okay. Basically, a digital footprint is, if I Google up anyone's name here in the audience, what am I going to see about you? That's what the footprint is. So if you Google up me, Jerry Del Bono, you might see a few photos of me in uniform at functions like this. But if I Google up someone, like on Facebook, and this is how dumb some criminals are, you'll see the photos of them with a little pile of cocaine and maybe a handgun next to it and a big wad of cash. That's the digital shadow. So if you go and apply for a job and they do a search on you and you see some really disturbing kind of stuff in their social media, it might be quite innocent as a kid, but it has consequences down the line when they go for a job. So it's important that kids understand the ramifications or consequences of putting some really inappropriate stuff online. This is another one too, and this happens in some Islamic schools where a boy might pressure a girl to send a photo with the headscarf removed, and then that might happen, and then later on the pressure goes up and it's like, send me a better one, And usually the girl will say, no, that's not going to happen. And then the pressure starts, if you don't send me a better one, I'm going to post this one to all your friends and your family. And that's sextortion. So that, again, is another problem. And it follows people around for the rest of their lives. And the thing is, if you get inappropriate photos in the digital world, it is almost next to impossible to get them removed. Okay, sending money online. In my limited capacity of that, I would strongly suggest you only send money through a legitimate organisation. You could probably speak more about it than I, so I'll put my colleague on.
Thanks, Gerald. Okay, I want to pick up on a couple of things. We're going to talk about general cyber safety in relation to payments, payment systems, regulations, because everybody wants to be able to do something to help Ukraine, but at the moment we've got a conflict between the things governments have done to help Ukraine in the form of sanctions and the reality of sending money into Ukraine at the moment. So I'm going to get into that in a bit of detail in a moment, and about charity selection and the issues associated with that. One thing I just want to tie back to what Gerald was just talking about. There's a lot of stuff, if you read through some of the background material coming in the media about the impacts of what's happening in Ukraine at the moment on children. The media and the psychologists are talking about it only in terms of the broader community. For our kids who know people in Ukraine, who may have met kids from there on camps or on trips or on hike, dancing groups have gone to Ukraine. Scouts, SUM, our kids here have been to Ukraine, they've got family over there. The vulnerability that can come at a time like this is when the predators, that relates back to what Gerald was just talking about, those predators know what communities are under pressure and they can target those children in those communities. So that's just something to bear in mind. If you see your kids showing signs, they're things to watch for.
Guys, just on that, if you see your kids, grandkids' personalities, behaviour changing, like they're becoming withdrawn or they're taking their devices, becoming more secretive, getting a bit dark in their personality, maybe not wanting to share with you what they're looking at online, this is concerning behaviour and you might want to get on top of that. Okay, you might want to have a sneaky look at their phone to see what they're looking at, because obviously during the height of ISIS there was some horrible stuff going around on the internet, really grotesque stuff, and kids were watching it, and then radicalisation was happening online. So that's one part of it, but here you've got other parts of it where kids can be damaged psychologically, and if you start seeing that, behaviour changes, start being concerned, start looking at it.
Thanks. Now, okay, coming back to the sanctions. The Western governments, for the first time ever, have put sanctions on the Russian central bank. Fantastic. Stops Putin being able to fund his attacks on Ukraine. Unfortunately, one of the consequences of that is a lot of financial transactions are no longer going through to Ukraine. When a transaction is initiated in Australia, it doesn't transfer straight from Australia to the bank in Ukraine. It goes through the payment infrastructure run in Belgium by a group called SWIFT, and there's a whole series of transactions at the start and the end. On the 25th of February, the first full day Australian time of the invasion, MoneyGram, for example, suddenly decided they weren't willing to transfer money over because they were worried that the Ukrainian banking system was under attack, ATMs were being overrun, so they withdrew services and money couldn't be transferred to Ukrainian banks for about 24 hours. They worked out, though, that Ukrainian banks were far more resilient than they'd expected, and they restored that service. Amex, on the other hand, pulled the plug last Wednesday. And they've pulled the plug not because they've got concerns about payments getting there. Their concern is that now that sanctions have been put on the Russian banks, if the Russians get access to a Ukrainian bank, having transferred money to the Ukrainian bank, that money will be in Russian hands and will be a breach of sanctions. So there's a whole bunch of regulation on one hand, real-world concerns on the other hand that are coming into all of this. Where this becomes important is how you decide to support Ukraine now. So we could all send money to individual members of our family, and that money might get there. It might get part way and bounce back, which is what happened with Amex last week. Or it might get lost because the bank that the money's, if you're using MoneyGram, for example, you designate the particular bank and who's going to collect it up. Their passport might have been destroyed when their apartment building was bombed. They might still be alive, but they no longer have the ID necessary to collect the money. So there's a whole bunch of issues associated with doing transactions at the very local level. Where this becomes important is then about the charities. The bigger charities have got more infrastructure, they can provide more support, they have alternate mechanisms. But one of the issues that came out in the bushfires here 2 years ago, a lot of people gave money to a charity, I can't remember what her name was now, Celeste Barber. She wanted to give money to the Rural Fire Service in New South Wales. Their Act of Parliament didn't allow them to accept money from charities. So people's money that was donated for a particular purpose, until the Parliament actually amended their law, couldn't be used for the purpose people had donated it. And one of the issues with UNICEF, and I'm not meaning to pick on very good charities who do a lot of good work around the world. You give the money to UNICEF and the money goes to UNICEF's pool, and UNICEF will spend the money in Ukraine. But if we've donated $100 million and at the end of it they decide $50 million is what they've spent and they've done all they can, they keep the other $50 million and use that elsewhere in the world in other areas. Now that works for us in terms of them using other people's money for us, but the charities that have been set up, the Crisis Appeal, You Help, we maintain control of where that money is spent. So we might collect money intending for it to be spent as it was originally with the Crisis Appeal on establishing physical therapy training. Now, the situation has changed, so the money we've raised we can use for alternate purposes. If down the track the war's over and we don't need to support the army, we can use that money to support rebuilding. So I think it's important for people to understand that whilst there's a lot of charities you can choose from, there's merit in choosing charities where you've got the maximum degree of knowledge about how the money's going to be spent and that the totality of the money can be spent supporting the cause you want to support. Okay? And again, it's a bit like people are collecting for a whole bunch of resources at the moment. Bandages, medical gear, that's all great. But how are we going to get that over the border? And again, if we use the larger charities, they'll have more infrastructure, they'll have more pull with the governments on either side. They'll be able to set up aid convoys that the Russians are less willing to attack. So all these things are things that we here, it's a bit more complicated. You know, it's great to be able to say, I've donated money to this small charity because it's in my hometown. That's great, you can do that. Not saying you don't do that, but I also think it's important we understand in the short term, medium term, long term, is the money we're donating going to be able to be spent entirely in Ukraine or for the benefit of Ukraine or not?
Probably directed more at the federal police. Obviously there's potential now for the Ukrainians as they're coming in for scammers to come in and access, say for example, a scammer coming on the telephone and saying that they're actually representing a charity to support Ukrainians and stuff like that. How do we let the public know how to recognise these charities, scams or not?
My advice is don't do it. Speak to these guys first and they'll direct you to the best way to put your money.
I think the key message is unsolicited attempts to get money from you are likely to be dodgy. As an example, you and I got together on the morning of the 25th. It was the first real day, that was the morning after it started. Slavko got a text message on his phone. I'm stuck outside Kiev. Can you please send me some money to help me get out of the country? Now, this person had his mobile number in Australia and sent an SMS to it. How likely is that to be real? Similarly with email things and things like that. So again, there are reliable charities that work with our community. There are charities that are run by international organisations like the Red Cross, the United Nations. If you want to support them, support them. A charity that you've never heard of before is most likely someone making a buck out of the Ukrainian community. So avoid it. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is we've got the thing with the cybersecurity is also around about payments. One of the things that governments around the world have got laws around about anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism finance. If people are trying to send money over to family in reasonable sums of money and it's an unusual payment, this attracts the attention of the authorities and the authorities investigate and you get hassled. With the charities, the governments and the organisations are used to them making payments, they understand the payment channels, so there's less likelihood of the money being held up in transit. So again, there's another rationale behind using some of the more established charities. One of the advantages of the crisis appeal is we're partnering with Rotary and Caritas. Caritas has the ability, because you can use the Vatican Bank, to transfer money outside ordinary banking systems in and out of countries. Rotary is a worldwide organisation. It's got networks around the world. It's registered around the world for charitable purposes, so monies donated through these things don't tend to get held up at borders or in bureaucracy along the way. The other area where conflict between regulators and bureaucracy is going to become an issue comes back to the visa topic. The Australian government beefed up the embassy in Kiev just before this happened, end of January. They sent a young Ukrainian guy and his wife over to beef up the embassy. They were then evacuated and they're currently in Warsaw. The embassy is currently working out of Warsaw. It's important that we follow the guidelines of the federal government because there are lots and lots of different visa categories. Government bureaucracies are very good at being able to say, visa class 600, they will now recognise as being eligible for refugee services. If you've applied for a particular refugee classification though, and it's not in that category, then them changing the rules to help Ukrainians may not get picked up because they're not going to go through their whole book of visas. Similarly, one of the issues we want to work on is at NISTOW, we have Visa debit cards. Visa debit cards can be used to help you get a driver's license, the 100-point check and things like that. But we have a requirement that you can show us 100 points of identity to get the Visa debit card, to open an account with us. If you're here on a normal visa or these kind of things, we have to follow those rules. One of the things we're hoping to be able to do is work with the government to say, we know the people coming out of Ukraine on this class of visa, their apartment buildings are being bombed. They don't have certain documentation. So if we want to be able to, and we haven't got there yet, we want to be able to negotiate with the government and say, are you willing to allow us not to meet the 100-point test where the person can demonstrate they're on a visa approved by you because of these circumstances? So again, using the visa recommendations of the government, that class of visa is really important because the bureaucracy is not very good at dealing with exceptions, and people coming out don't want to be exceptions. I think the other thing at the moment is, the reality is, and I've seen this with our staff, the first week of the crisis, the invasion, there was a real sense almost of pride, of optimism, because we were doing so much better than everybody expected us to. Last week, bombing in Mariupol, Kharkiv, it's hard to maintain that momentum. So I think as a community as a whole, I've been a bit frustrated that sometimes I'm going to a lot of meetings. People kind of snipe at one another. I think it's really important that we don't turn on each other and take out our frustrations on each other because we're all feeling rather fragile at the moment. Everybody's going through the same kind of thing. And so I just sort of want to highlight that because I've seen it happen in other communities, I've seen it happen with other events. This is not going to be over quickly. There's no sign Putin's going to back down. So we have to stay strong, and that means not taking it out on each other. But it also means keeping pressure on the politicians, because there's an election coming up, and I don't know about you, but I'm worried that the moment the election's over, they're going to forget about us. And I think this is where we need you all to focus on what matters, and not on little differences between the different groups in the community, or whether someone thinks that something could be done better. We're all trying to do the best we can. Things are moving so fast, and unless we work together, we'll get forgotten. Okay, I think that's it for me at the moment.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Gerald, and thank you, David. Look, I know that you've probably got a lot of questions you want to ask. If I could just ask, I'll ask Teresa to just explain where she's got to with this humanitarian aid committee, which, as I said, we're just ramping up, and she's trying to put that in place, and then ask Halia to talk about this hub, because that's going to be very important, particularly if we set it up here, where you can bring your friends, your family, etc., people that have arrived, and we can deal with their needs and so forth. There's a lot of other things that are happening in parallel, which I didn't want to go through, but one, for example, is medical assistance. What do we do today if one of the people that's already arrived needs medical assistance? Marusia Rostek, one of our doctors, Ukrainian doctors here, is collecting a list of doctors who are willing to treat patients for free at this stage. So there's this sort of work happening in the background. And that's being, we're assisting from the Hromada here, as well as SUA. But I'll just hand over to Teresa.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everybody. I'm Teresa Kohut. I'm going to be leading...
No relation.
No relation, actually. I'm going to be leading the AUV's Ukrainian Humanitarian Aid Committee. We are a very, very new committee. Our first meeting was on Tuesday, so we are only, 3-4 days old. But I can tell you that we have been working really hard and really fast. What our position is in regards to what we're offering is that we are going to be looking after the displaced people as they come off the planes. So as soon as they land and make contact with us, we will take care of their needs as far as what they need in regards to accommodation, whether they need social services, whether they need healthcare, whether they need a doctor, psychiatrist. We do know that they're actually coming with a lot of trauma. We know that the children are very traumatised at the moment, so we are actually putting in place trauma counselling specific for the children and things like that. Another thing that we're actually aiming to, and we're actually aiming to do this really, really quickly, we're hoping to have this set up in the next couple of weeks, is to get trauma training for all of the volunteers that are going to be assisting our families. So making sure that we understand what their triggers are, what their traumas are, and how we can handle that gently. As you can imagine, children, they might be frightened of a certain colour or a certain thing that triggers memories, or noises that might trigger things. So we've just got to be mindful, and we're working on it. What we're trying to do, and what we're going to be doing under the AUV, will be bringing all of the services that we know together. So that'll be in the one place. So any information that you need regarding visas, or whether it be for healthcare, doctors, nurses, hospitals, accommodation, transport, even in regards to banking and all of that, will be in the centre hub, which is right in the centre of all of this, and this will be at AUV. So it is early days now. We are working hard to put this together. We have many organisations and many committees working on it, and each of them are working on a different group and a different organisation. But we promise that we are trying to tie this all together. We're just going to ask you all to be very patient. We do not have all the answers right now, but we are working hard to get them for you. So I just want to ask if anybody's got questions regarding my humanitarian group. No questions?
Mine isn't a question, it's a statement. Because these people are coming, as you say, traumatised, and they've all got something in common, they're going to come into a strange country, may or may not speak the language or understand. wouldn't it be better if we could somehow get them into Mikulam as a group? So that means they are all together for at least a week, you know, safety of COVID, and then give them the support of psychiatry or doctor or whatever, but so they come to terms that they've been moved so far away from their homeland and come to a strange country.
That's exactly what we're looking at, is like we're trying to keep them together as a group, because probably the best support is with each other, and they're going to need each other in order to get through what they're getting through. They're not going to be alone in finding all of these services and things like that. So it's always a common denominator amongst people is that you have to have something in common. And it may be, you know, the unfortunate thing of what's happening in Ukraine, that might be the thing that's drawing them together. But it's one thing that they can rely on each other because they're experiencing exactly the same thing, so they tend to fall on each other. We, as the humanitarian aid, are trying to do that as a group. Some of them may need to do it on an individual basis, some of them may need to do it on a group, but we are going to take everything into consideration, including accommodation.
Can I just add a word there? We're expecting that probably 80% of people are going to have family here. So sending them to Mikulam may not be the best option. If they've got family and someone to speak to and live with, that's probably an easier option. But still, we need to try and centralise the information so that if they need other support, it can go through Teresa's group.
And we'll use AUV, and we'll use this community centre as generally a place for even those that are actually going into families and things like that as a meeting point, so that even though they might be with family and friends, they still have a place that they can connect. And I mean, there's social events that will somewhere down the track. I mean, like I said, this is early days and we are still trying to put our services together.
Sorry, maybe it's a silly question. I just had a call from my friends who are in Kyiv, and they thinking about how to flee somewhere or whatever. And my question is, I'm not relating to anyhow to them. Is it any possibility I can do some sort of the visa or whatever visa?
I think this is very. It's very, like I said, I mean, it's very difficult for us to be managing on what's happening over in Ukraine. So I'm not sure what support services they have there.
No. I ask if they can do some visitor visa to here. I'm not related to these people.
I don't know how we can help them. I mean, yeah.
Can I apply for in their behalf?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I'll just give you. Hanya's got more information regarding that.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Hanya Sanyev. I'll talk a little bit about visas. I'll talk about the community hub and then maybe education as well. So with regards to visas, anybody at all can apply for a visa, and it's a 600. It's a visa subclass 600, which is a visitor visa. And that visa is one of the easiest visas to obtain. You can get that visa very, very quickly. And so if you apply for that visa, each person will then be able to come to Australia. Now that visa allows you to stay in Australia for 3 months. There is the option to, later down the track, to extend that, but the advice is to just take that 3-month visa. That's the most important thing. They won't be able to access anything. So often people will say, and you may hear some people advising you, that you are able to access education with that visa. You can access education, however, there is a fee charged on that. For a primary age child, it's $308 a week. For a junior secondary, it's $409 a week. Senior secondary, $459 a week. So the advice that I'm providing, so I actually work for Melbourne Archdiocese Catholic Schools and Catholic Education Commission of Victoria. And so I actually care for and look after students that are enrolled on visas across Victoria in Catholic schools. And so anybody that comes in on a 600 visa, yes, we can enrol them. However, my advice to a number of immigration lawyers who have been contacting me trying to get enrolments into schools is that the best option is to, once you arrive here in Australia, because we're still waiting on the advice from the federal government to tell us whether or not they're going to come up with a humanitarian package. At this point in time, we don't have that information. We will have that information between 7 and 10 days. All we can do is we can look at previous cohorts who have actually arrived in Australia. The most recent cohort who had to be evacuated very, very quickly on a 600 visa were the Afghan community. And the Afghan community all arrived on a 600 visitor visa. When they arrived in Australia, what happened then is the humanitarian package that was provided to them was that they then had to apply for a short stay humanitarian visa, which is a 449 visa. That visa, once you apply for that visa, that may take some time for you to get that visa, but the key with this is that you then will be given a bridging visa. Once you are given a bridging visa, that gives you access to Centrelink at a reduced rate. It gives you access to Medicare. It also gives you access to fee-exempt education. So you will be able to take any of your relatives' children to a Catholic school or a department school, and you will be able to get education for them. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about with regards to education, because I already know that there are families who have already arrived. I was able to facilitate 2 enrolments in a Catholic school this week. Now, what you need to remember when trying to find a school for a school-aged child, essentially what happens if you want to enrol in a department school is because the child that comes here doesn't have very much English, the advice generally is to go to an English language centre. English language centres currently are at capacity, so you will not be able to get an enrolment in an English language centre. My advice to you is to go to a Catholic school, is to enrol in a Catholic school. We actually provide funding directly to the school, and we provide that funding for English language learning in the mainstream setting. So the child will then be able to enrol in the school, be and develop relationships with friends within a community, within a parish community, and then get access to English language learning. So what we do is we provide that funding directly to the school. The school then employs a qualified teacher to provide that teaching. The other thing that Catholic schools do is if you do actually obtain a bridging visa with the view to get a 449 visa, we also provide additional funding for humanitarian arrivals. We know that there are settlement issues. We know that these children are coming with trauma. We know that they're going to need counselling. And so we provide additional funding to the school so that the school can access those services. There are a number of services out there. Foundation House is one of them, and Foundation House actually provides free counselling services for any humanitarian arrival. And that's really important, to use the services that are there. They also, each school also has the option to engage the services of a translator. So we know that the families, the mothers and children that are coming, may not have conversational English. They may not be able to speak and communicate. So we can organise an interpreter to be present, and that is funded also. If they can't get one to come on site, we can actually get it on the phone. So we can do a 3-way conversation so that the family then feels a lot more comfortable and they actually understand what is happening and they're able to get all of their questions answered. So can I please advise, if you do have family who have arrived and they have school-aged children and you're finding it difficult for them to get into a school, I'm happy for you to contact me and I can facilitate an enrolment in one of our Catholic schools. I won't be able to facilitate an enrolment in a department school, however in a Catholic school I will be able to support that. One thing that I can say is I have also been speaking to my counterparts in the department, the International Education Division, and they're looking to make an announcement next week to say that all fees will be waived for a 600 visa. So hopefully that will be announced in the next week or so. Did you want to say something?
This is just the trio of ladies. So, hello, my name's Liana Slipatska. I'm the branch manager of the AUV Noble Park. I just wanted to reiterate something. First of all, I think Teresa already said it, we need to slow down a little bit. I know everybody has, out of the goodness of their hearts, they want to help. There's no collection of clothing or anything like that at the moment. We're getting a lot of requests for that. We need to address these people on an as-need basis. Also, I attended a AFUO meeting and the Chair, Stefan Romaniov, has explained something that I'd like to pass on. We are referring to these Ukrainians fleeing as displaced persons, okay? And there's a reason behind that. And one of them is that we need to remember that we hope that they can return to Ukraine. So if they are coming to Australia, it's for safe haven for a short stay. What we want to avoid is a brain drain on Ukraine, where all the skilled workers, all the intellects, the educated people leave and make a life elsewhere. So for me personally, I don't want to see Bonagilla version 2, which is what our grandparents went through. We need to stay positive and hope that we're going to assist these people to return. So on a micro level here, what we can be doing is, number one, donating financially. I appreciate all the calls we're getting about I have this and I have that. There's no need for that at the moment. And as Slavko said, most people will be coming to their families. Teresa also explained this is changing every day. And we have just actually been talking that we would perhaps also like in the planning to be maybe a visa clinic where on a one-on-one basis we can help individuals fill out these visas. Running around a hall like this answering your questions isn't the forum to do that, and I think that we're answering phones and emails sort of on a triage system as best we can. So let's think about this as a temporary solution to make Ukrainians safe with the purpose of returning. And on any level, another thing I'd like to encourage you, if you have not been a member of the Association of Ukrainians in Victoria for your life, now's the time to join, because we need people, we need volunteers, we need memberships to keep these organisations going. You would not be here in this building today if it wasn't for all the members. So we love the fact that we have seen lots of new faces, you know, but please, don't just come when there's a crisis, come and stay. Ďakujem.
Thanks, Liana. I'll just talk a little bit about, Slavko asked me to talk a little bit about hubs. I'll only take a couple of minutes to do that. So I just wanted to explain what a community hub is. So many of you may not know what that is. There've been a number of hubs set up at schools and at other community centres. So basically a community hub works with the federal, state and local governments, businesses, not-for-profits and community organisations to deliver programs that increase connection between the individual and the community. So basically the Ukrainians that are arriving and the community that we are, the Ukrainian community here. Okay, and that's why the aim is to potentially set up a community hub here at the Dumivka, so that people have that connection already to the community. And that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter, you know, what faith they are. The one thing that they have in common is that they're Ukrainian, okay? And they're coming from Ukraine. So what we want to do is we want to create that community hub here. Now that community hub will have the access to a number of services. So some of the services are, for example, we might have a nurse stationed and timetabled a couple of days a week. And so when arrivals come and they know that that they're a diabetic and they need medication immediately, okay? So that person can come to the hub, see the nurse will be able to write a prescription for diabetes and or then connect them to services. Okay, so that's the most important thing. When they come here, the people that are stationed here, and they're not going to be just Ukrainian people, there will be Ukrainian people, but there will be others. So that's why we have to connect with the Department of Health, all other community and local government organisations. They'll all be coming in support services. They'll all be supporting us. We'll be having doctors also stationed here, so that whatever anybody needs, if they come, they need a wheelchair, we can organise that for them. Maybe they need legal advice, we can organise that for them. So that's what a hub is. It's a spot, a place where people can actually come and get whatever service they need. Most importantly, because the basic needs that Ukrainians arriving initially will need will be medical. Okay, they're not going to need trauma counselling straight away because they're still going to be heightened from what has been happening. They're going to need to make sure that the basics are sorted for them. So accommodation, medical, health, education. Once they're settled, that's when we can start organising counselling and stuff like that for them. So that's what we're aiming to do with the hub.
Just on that, in regards to the community hub, I just want everyone to remind everybody that this is in planning stages only. So therefore, I don't want you to go away with the expectation that this is just going to happen. There is a team behind working really hard every day, every hour to try and get this over the line. So we are doing the best we can at the fastest pace we possibly can. Obviously, we're going to have some hurdles and things that are going to slow us down, but I really, really emphasise on the fact that this really is in planning stages. It's where our goals are, where our aims are. We're just not quite there yet, but we hope to be there soon.
Okay, ďakujem, Teresa. Before I'll open it up to questions in a minute. I've actually got one online, but before I do that, I just want to alert you, on your chairs you had this document. I think Taras left that, if I'm not mistaken, Taras Kontek, and it actually describes the Ukraine crisis appeal and a few issues about it. Now, while we were talking, we had a question from Fleur via the YouTube on the topic of sending money to a relative in Lviv. Is Western Union still working in Ukraine? Could my relative pick up the money as cash from a Western Union agent? We're not sure, and I don't think... No. You've...
I've had personal experience. I've had to send it into Poland and it was trucked across.
Okay.
So that's just been my personal experience.
Yeah, so a lot of these money transfer companies may or may not be valid. And today might be one thing, tomorrow they might be closed. Do you have experience? When was that? A week ago, okay. So we're not sure just now. Wise. Okay, there's a recommendation here to use WISE, W-I-S-E. Okay, and it was done 2 days ago, so the money went across. So, sorry? Took 11 hours to clear. So there's a recommendation of somebody that actually used it. Did you have a... Okay. Okay, we've got a question here.
My question is firstly directed to David. In relation to money transfers, or money directed to Ukraine. When I was in Ukraine the last time in 2019, I have several Ukrainian, debit cards, and I left one of those with people in Lviv, and they've been successfully using it. In fact, I looked at my app today, and one of them was used only a matter of hours ago, probably. Now, your recommendation as the chairman of Gestar, do I continue, or what do I do with it?
I'd be really careful here because, strictly speaking, we are not allowed to encourage people to give a card on an Australian bank account to be used in a foreign jurisdiction. It's a grey area in terms of the anti-money laundering rules. So I'm just going to leave that one alone.
So we're talking about money laundering and the federal.
There are rules about people operating accounts that are operated in Australia when they're not in Australia. There are different rules and things like that. Let's not get into that because that's not relevant. If that's working for them, fantastic. How long it will continue to work? Yeah. Well, it's up to all the parties in between. At the moment it's working, but yeah.
My second question or comment is earlier this morning I had a video chat with a gentleman from Sydney, somebody well known to Liana here. It's Lyubov Slipatsky, and he asked the question of me. He said, look, we've already had people come in from Ukraine to Sydney. He didn't say how many, and he asked me, have you had any come into Melbourne? And I said, look, I'm sorry, I don't know, but I'm coming to this meeting today, and I'll put the question. Now, the next thing that he said was that we are in the process of organising collections of food, clothing, all the the basic needs for these refugees. He said, is something like that going to happen in Melbourne? I said, well, I'm going to put that question here.
What I can tell you is actually this is probably an important part. There is an actual database that's actually being produced right now as far as what the Ukrainians that are actually coming through. Like we mentioned beforehand, majority of those have actually got family to go through. However, we are also picking up, if there is anybody that happens to be displaced, we are picking them up. Sydney currently, and I know Victoria are about to get it, where there is a ticketing system at the airport. So as soon as they register and they come through the gates, we know about them. And it's QR code. So they can scan the QR code and we will be able to pick up their information pretty much quickly and get in contact with them and find out where they're going, do they have family, and any supports that they might need. So that's currently in place in Sydney. It is in the process of happening in Victoria. Currently, Sydney, with their tracking, some of the people that are coming through flights from Sydney, and then from Sydney, they're going to make their way to Melbourne. We're in communication all the time. So we actually are building up a database. So when there is a displaced person, and at the moment we believe we have one that's coming in about a week, that information we are given that information directly. We're just waiting on further details in regards to the age of the children, what the parents need, and then we will touch base with them immediately and find out whether they need accommodation, whether they need services and things like that. So just letting you know there are things in place and things are starting to click together. It's just taking time, but it's happening at a very fast pace.
Any other questions? Stock.
Ladies and gentlemen, Slocker Tom. Look, the most important issue for us at the moment is not the after effects, it's to stop this bloody war. We got a psychopath in the Kremlin, and we got generals who just want to bust Ukraine. They're smashing Ukraine, they're smashing the cities, they're bringing in foreign fighters to kill our people, and the United Nations, the EU, NATO and America are twiddling their thumbs and doing nothing. What we have to be doing is making representations to the UN to ensure that Putin, his cabinet and his military are immediately charged with war crimes. I heard a lady from the War Crimes Tribunal last week saying we're looking into investigating war crimes. Well, every one of us in this room, every night since the 24th of February, have been watching the commission of bloody war crimes. We got 1.5 million, nearly 2 million Ukrainian refugees. It's winter over there. We got women and children walking in the snow for 16 hours to get to safety in Poland. Biden and the NATO made a very big mistake at the beginning of this whole crisis. They made the silly comment that they wouldn't be putting boots on the ground. Well, they should have actually said nothing to let Putin think that if they did invade Ukraine, they would put boots on the ground. The Europeans are very comfortable at the moment. They're getting gas and oil from Russia. They're very reluctant to have the little lifestyle upset. Ukraine is being devastated, and in the last day or so I've heard reports that Russians are bringing in foreign fighters from Syria to fight in Ukraine. Now, Russia has been bombing citizens in Syria for the last 6 or 8 years. Why would any Syrian want to come at the behest of Russia to bomb Ukraine? Now, if NATO and the US can't see what's happening, I feel sorry for our people. We are going to lose a country. Our principal thing should be to push our politicians, make representation to the UN, get in touch with Ukrainian citizens in Canada and America who have a bit more clout than we have. They've got a larger population. They've got, people in very high government positions and in business positions. We've got to put pressure on Biden. Every time I listen to Biden, I say to myself, he gets up in the morning and he doesn't know where he is. Every time Biden goes and speaks about Ukraine, he should have 3 generals on his left and 3 generals on his right. Okay.
Yeah, Ďakujem, Slavko. We're aware of that. The issue here is that there are people rolling into the country. We need to help them. On that note that Slavko was saying, Stefan Romaniu is in Warsaw as we speak. I think he's probably arrived. He's there to make representation, as Slavko was saying, and then he's going to Germany to try and talk to the government there to try to get the, no-fly zone over Ukraine. So he's going to be trying to push for that. But now, any other questions about visas or donations or whatever that you might have? Any others?
Who can I see to help me fill out this form for the 600 visa?
Who? Takla? Yeah, Takla Jaworska. Do you know Takla at all? She works in this office, in the building here, just an office behind, every day. I can give you, later on I can give you her contact details.
And she'll be able to put you in touch with an immigration lawyer. There are a number of immigration lawyers that are doing some pro bono work. Okay, so they'll be able to put you in contact with someone.
So just as a general thing, anyone wants help with their visas, or visa for their family, just talk to Takla. She'll help you with that process, including lawyers as well. Yes, one more.
Thank you. This question is more for the AFP. Can we get some clarification on what the Australian laws are regarding people potentially volunteering to join Ukraine's Foreign Legion from Australia? And I don't know if this was mentioned or not, but the other question I have is the 600 subclass visa, is that only for people who have family ties in Australia, or can anyone? Okay.
Anyone. It's a visitor visa.
Yeah, sponsored or unsponsored. Yes, yes and no. What if their passport is lost because of circumstances? They note that in, and the Australian government will take that into account. Okay.
In relation to your question about travelling to Ukraine to, is it to fight? The Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade website, if you Google and look at that, it says do not travel. So the recommendation from us and the government is do not travel. Okay, on that, if you Google up my centre, it's a mosque in the northern suburbs. Sheikh Abu Hamza went into Afghanistan recently for humanitarian work. I had meetings with him about that and suggest, same thing, do not travel. Inshallah, he's still okay, and I think he's coming back very shortly. And a member of your community also came to you guys and asked us to have a chat with him. And the advice we gave him was, do not travel.
The issue will be, you can go there and you can fight, but coming back might be an issue because it's against the Australian law.
Yeah. The other thing is, I don't know whether you've been following the media, but the Ukrainian army has actually declined some of the people who've come across the border to fight. One of the big issues that's happening from family we're talking to is the number of situations where the Ukrainians aren't sure who's working with them and who's working against them. If you remember the first week, there was a lot of stuff about Kiev and some of the other cities about people blowing things up and marking buildings and things like that. One of the challenges for the Ukrainian military is that, according to the embassy, when they put this, when the president asked for this, he was talking mainly about Ukrainian citizens who were working in Poland, Italy, Europe, who understand the culture, whose body language is the same, who are going to be able to come back and interact with people in a battalion and able to understand one another. One of the things that will complicate life for them is if one of us went over, we've grown up in a different environment. We read signs different. We don't interpret things the same way. We don't have the same ability to understand. Personally, I think we'd be a liability for them, when they can't afford that. So there's lots of reasons against it and not much for it. My personal feeling, work here now, and then when the reconstruction comes, volunteer and go and do that once things are settled down and it's within the rules, and you can make a 100% profitable contribution to the society.
And just on that point, when President Zelensky made that comment, he didn't realise the extent of the comment went global. He was actually referring to European countries who have foreign legions as part of their services. They have people that join a foreign legion and then go to other countries to fight. So it was sort of directed more to those, okay?
Guys, just on that too, look, thank God we live in this country in Australia. Touch the ground, kiss the ground that we live here. Stay here, do what you can here to support your community, because Ukrainians here need you as well here. Like they said, when it's over and reconstruction starts, then do what you've got to do. Obviously, if the government says it's okay to go. But you're going to go into a war zone, and you, untrained, you'll become a casualty very, very quickly. Okay? And that you have a life to live here as well. Your life has worth and has meaning. So never forget that. Okay?
Okay. I've got a couple of other questions which I'll read out in a minute, but I'd like a response later on. Was this session worth it? I mean, as we're going through, things are going to be changing. I'm expecting that maybe every week or every second week we can call a meeting like this and give you an update what we know and get more people to actually speak about real issues that concern you. So have a think about that, and I'll ask you that in a minute again. I've just got a question here from Alistair Birch. What about Ukrainians with a non-Ukrainian partner who are fleeing Ukraine together? Will they be eligible? Well, Mr. Birch, I don't know. I expect so, but I don't know. That's something we'll have to take on board.
I think the wording is people fleeing Ukraine was the wording the government used.
Yeah, but if the partner's not official, I don't know. So, again, another one. who should apply for a visa? Is it the Ukrainian person or a relative in Melbourne? Oh, okay, I think we sort of answered that. Anyone can raise it. We can raise it on behalf of our family or friends, or they can raise it through Warsaw, through the Australian Embassy in Warsaw. So do you think sessions like this would be valuable? Yeah? Okay. We'll continue them. We'll probably organise a little bit with a little bit more focused information as we get to know what we're doing, because at the moment half of us don't really know what we're doing. We're chasing our tail and trying to do the best. Are there any other questions?
Yes. Where's the advertisement and the time frame?
Okay. All right. This building belongs to the Association of Ukrainians in Victoria, and we have a website, AUV, or Association of Ukrainians in Victoria. We also have on Facebook, and any events that we hold are put out on Facebook as well as that. And members, should you want to join, get emails of events regularly. So anyone wants to join, we welcome you. Okay, any other questions? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
You mentioned about Poland. What about other countries like Moldova and that are bordering with Ukraine? What's the relationship there with the Australian government?
It's the same no matter where they've crossed over, Hungary, Romania, Poland or whatever. We talk about Poland because that's where most have gone. I think it's 1.5 million or something now already. Yes, but the others are the same. I'm not sure what embassy we have there or what level of embassy we have, but they can make contact through the local embassy or through the Polish embassy in Warsaw.
If there's not an Australian embassy, my understanding is where there's not an Australian embassy in the city, we've got a partnership with the Canadian government.
Oh.
And in fact, in Kyiv, the Australian embassy was housed in the Canadian embassy. So if they're in Bucharest or in Romania or something like that, and they can't find an Australian embassy, I'd go to the Canadian embassy and ask them for assistance, because we've got that direct relationship with the Canadian government. They'll be able to give assistance.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Well, look, I really thank you for coming today. We're learning as we go, and we learn from your questions. We've got plenty of sandwiches and coffee and tea up the back, and a lot of Ukrainian beer at the bar. So if you want to stay and have a bite to eat, welcome, and please help yourself. Thank you very much. Now, I'd just like to finish by singing the Ukrainian anthem. Could we all stand, please? Ще не вмерла Україна. Слава Україні!
Too bad. Exactly. No, I like that.
Ukrainians.